Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rise of Kingdom video. My name is Legend Ronnie and today I want to talk about my 5 marches that I used in the last KvK, and I want to talk about the difference between big and small murder ball because I had to adjust my 5 marches depending if I was going in a big murder ball, which is 50 plus marches, or if I was going into a small murder ball, which is about 20 plus marches, 15, even 10 marches. It's still a murder ball. I will also answer some of your questions that you probably have regarding some commanders. Why are they so weak in a murder ball? They just get smashed, they get demolished, but they probably perform better in some other situations. So I want to go through all this and I want to detail in this video and explain in the same time all of the above. I'm going to start with the 5 marches that I have used in a big murder ball, because when the Kingsland open, you can check the live stream when our Kingsland has opened. I went with 5 marches because that's what everyone does. My recommendation is that if you don't have 5 strong marches, instead of just bringing very weak commanders and epic commanders, which usually are a target on the battlefield, I would recommend to just bring 2 or 3 marches that you have that are the strongest, that you have the best equipment on them. That's kind of the most beneficial. But if you do have 5 marches like me, then definitely bring 5 marches on the field. So my 5 marches is as the following. I was using Genghis Khan with Takeda, which we have it over here. Genghis Khan. I also have the Max Takeda, which is further down over here. That was the first march. Then the second march was Saladin with YSG, which I have it over here. The third march was El Cid with Ramses. It might surprise you, but I'm going to explain. The fourth march was Edward. Obviously, how can I skip Edward? With Tomiris. And the fifth march was Guan Yu with Alexander, which everyone knows. Guan Yu and Alexander, a very well-known pair. Going on to the big murder ball, these were my 5 marches. Now you're probably wondering why, because Genghis primary is very squishy, right? Ronnie, why did you put Genghis first? In a big murder ball, it's very hard that someone really recognize your march. If you do get targeted, you could say that you are lucky. For example, my Genghis was not a target, and that's the reason why I put him with Takeda. Because as silly as this heal is from his third skill, 150, Genghis is a very good rage engine. Everyone knows about Genghis, that he is very fast creating skills on his primary because he has 950 rage requirements, and you can take another 100 away from because of his second skill, which that makes his primary to 850 rage requirements, which is the lowest in the game right now. Meaning that Genghis and Takeda, they're just gonna pop skill as often as possible, and every time that Takeda is gonna use Fears of the Fire, you get about 600 healing factor, split it over 4 seconds, which helps Genghis stay longer on the battlefield. And Takeda just offered Genghis exactly what he needs, because Genghis has no protection. He's very weak. Everyone knows that. So if your Genghis is a target, first of all, you're not gonna melt in 3 seconds. You're gonna last for a while, and if you can pay attention, you might have the time to drag and drop and get him out of the murder ball. When that happens, you're also going to drag and drop a couple of marches with you, where your members will notice or you will notice, and you can hit them with your other marches. That's what I do. How you can check that if he is a target is by either hearing the sound or checking the health bar from the right. When you're in the game on the murder ball, you see your marches on the right side. You see the health bar, you see the health bar going drastically low or very fast low on one of your marches. You can instantly drag and drop and try to save it. Takeda offers cavalry defense, which again gives Genghis Khan the protection that he needs, and a little bit of attack over here, 40%. If you're lucky enough, you can get 30% march speed when you're retreating, which obviously is going to help you a lot as well. The second march that I was using, Saladin and YSG, are probably wondering why. It's because of the AoE. Saladin just offered the protection that YSG needs, and you have mobility and you have AoE in the same time. This is a well-known pair that a lot of players use. Now, if you want to put your YSG second to an LC, that's perfectly fine. You can put Aethelflaed second to your Saladin, which is also a very nice pair. You can also bring AoE on the battlefield, or you can put your Joan, or you can put your Mulan. Especially when you go into the big murder balls, it helps a lot to have some debuff and have some buffs as well in the same time. But I went with Saladin and YSG because I'm also VIP 17. I have a lot of good equipment, so I prefer to just do as much damage as possible. Saladin and YSG. The third pair I was mentioning, Elcid and Ramses. For the reason of debuffing is why I brought Ramses over there, because Ramses, once you obtain his expertise, offers heal immunity to the target and also decrease the defense by 2 seconds for 30%. And I find Ramses being also very tanky in the same time, so if my Elcid was ever going to be a target, I'm pretty sure Elcid and Ramses can take a series of punches before they go down. But like I was mentioning, if you don't have Ramses, then you can go Elcid and YSG, and you just simply put Aethelflaed second to your Saladin. Going on to the fourth march, is very obvious why I used Edward and Tomiris. Is as simple as it can be. You want the 4 skill from Tomiris. Once you have 5 marches with just skill damage, you need Tomiris. She is a must-have in a big murder ball. Edward and Tomiris, they also have mobility, they also have the debuffs. Edward allows Tomiris to stack up those skills, because if the poison don't stack up, then your other marches when you're swarming a target will not deal so much damage. So you want to put Edward primary so Tomiris can stack these poisons. Going on to the fifth march is pretty obvious. Guan Yu and Alexander. You can check the primary skill from Guan Yu. You get the silence plus the insane damage, then you have additional damage as well. Alex as well, you have insane damage, and then you have the expertise from Alexander on a couple of targets. So you have debuffs and you have buffs as well, because also does a shield on another march or another target, friendly target by 600. So there's a lot of utilities for Guan Yu and Alex to bring on the battlefield, not to mention that they both offer march speed, so they have quite a decent mobility. All the 5 marches that I have said so far, they all have mobility. They are not slow at all, so if I either have to retreat them or refresh them, it's not going to take me very long. This is the 5 marches that I used for a big murder ball. Now what would I change to these 5 marches? Elcid, in the future, once I put my hands on Cyrus, I would do Cyrus with YSG rather than keep bringing Elcid, and I would bring Chandra Gupta and William so I can put my Saladin with Genghis. So that would be the 5 marches that I would do in the future. So I'll still keep Guan Yu and Alex. I'll still keep Edward and Tomiris. It's just introducing William, Chandra, and Cyrus in the future whenever I'm going to get them. This is for the big murder ball again. When I went to a smaller murder ball, because I wanted to talk about that as well, that I said I adjusted my marches, my first go-to was my usual 5 marches, which I already mentioned. It was a 10 versus 10 situation. Everyone had VIP 16, 17 or whatever. Everyone had tier 5s. Everyone had good equipment. So it was fighting with proper players, with proper equipment and everything like that. My Edward was constantly a target, and it was going down pretty fast because there was 10 T5 marches going on 1 Archer march with next to 0 defense. Once Edward was going down, obviously I retreated. I don't keep a march to get smashed, but sometimes I don't know, for some reasons, I think the mobility gets bugged or whatever is happening, he was getting smashed. Next time it was my L Cid, because it was either L Cid with YSG and so on, or L Cid with Ramses, which again wasn't as tanky as I was hoping. It was going down as well, while I was barely getting one of their marches to half. And I said something needs to change because I can't keep going on like this. I was just, dwelling. It was 2 players versus 2 players. We were just, having friendly fights over there, and it was just not working. So I've done the following change. Instead of keep bringing weak marchers that most likely will get demolished, I changed my marchers the following. I brought Constantine with YSG. I first tried with John of Arc. I know what you're thinking, because I know Joan of Arc is the buff queen, right? So why not bring Joan of Arc? But everything that was touching Constantine was getting better traits. Like even AoE, it doesn't matter. Small damage, a small nudge. Constantine and Joan of Arc, they were having bad trades. So I decided that it's not what I want. So I brought Constantine with YSG was the first march. The second march was Saladin with Ethelfled, so I excluded Genghis as well. The third march that I brought was Attila and Takeda, obviously very tanky. The fourth march was Guan Yu and Alex, and the fifth march was Ramses and Artemisia. Now you tell me which march you want to pick on from these five pieces, right? Because when it's the small murder ball, this is what I'm trying to point out, you can pick the targets because you're going against 10 marches, right, or 15 marches. You can easily pick the target that you want to focus on. So you can always go for the weak marches, which was my situation where my Edward was getting demolished every single time, and then El Cid and so on. But when you go in a big murder ball, that's kind of a needle in the haystack, right? And like I said, if you do get selected, it means you're lucky. The moment I went with these five marches, the situation was having a reverse. It was us who were demolishing them. It was us who was bringing their marchers to red, and they had to retreat. It wasn't me and my friend who had to retreat. It was them. And our marchers were still on white, or in the worst situation, one of the march was going on yellow. So the situation is as follows. When you want to go in a big murder ball, you want to bring as much firepower as you can get, but probably not necessarily Genghis double C or some of the super weak marches. You want to bring a little bit of defense, or at least aid the mobility, that if you get demolished by the AoE, you don't have to get targeted sometimes, especially if you have commanders like Genghis and double C, which I already mentioned. If you have them together, you don't necessarily need to be a target. The amount of AoE in a murder ball can decrease the number of your march. So that's where you want to pay attention so you can retreat in time. Just refresh the march and come back. You don't have to stay there with a red march, with a half march, or whatever. Just get it fresh. The power of the march will also increase when you're gonna hit targets as well. That's why when I go in a big murder ball, that's why all my marches are based on so much mobility. But when I went against a smaller murder ball, I just noticed that having very defensive marches was just paying off. And they were focusing my Constantine. They were not going for my Attila Takeda because obviously he's very tanky. Saladin and Ethelfled, it's also very tanky. They're not going for that either. Guan Yu as well is fairly tanky with Alexander. Then they try a couple of times to go against Ramses and Artemisia, because before I was doing Ramses and Artemisia, I was bringing Ramses and YSG. Right? Because Ramses and YSG is fairly good, but he was still going down fast enough. And since I was bringing Ramses and Artemisia, it wasn't going down so fast. Their marches were not going down as fast, but I was very tanky. I was surprisingly tanky. That's what I want to say, because I know some of you don't have like 25 legendaries like I do, or some other players that have a lot of legendaries, so don't have these options like I do to just keep adjusting your marches. But I want to give you this because it will definitely help you out understand why you're probably performing much better in a smaller murder ball, or why you're performing much better in a bigger murder ball. Now, if you have very tanky marches, like I was just mentioning, you're probably wondering, well, what can I do in a big murder ball? You'll do almost as fine as you're doing in a smaller murder ball because you're very tanky. You have a lot of defensive and you have a lot of AoE. And if you're very defensive, that's exactly what you need to bring: buffs and AoE. Players like me, like I was saying, my 5 marches when I went into the big murder ball, it helps a lot because we are just dishing out. We are like Terminators, we're just demolishing everything one after another, while players that have tanky marches, they just take the damage and buff the rest. So it pretty much works hand in hand. Now I do hope this kind of answers some of your question, why some commanders are performing very well in some situation, when some commanders are performing very well in other situation. So for example, right now, when I go in a big mother ball, I just don't use Ramses. I have a level 60 Ramses, and I just rarely use him. I prefer to bring commanders with faster mobility like El Cid, so I can refresh him pretty fast. But if I go on a smaller murder ball, or for example, we are just camping, waiting for the marches to come out and swarm the rally, for example, we are rallying a flag, they're not even coming out of their city, then I don't bring El Cid, because on those kind of situation, they just want good trades because you're on their territory. So they just gank the weakest marches that you have. So on those kind of situation, I go with Ramses, I go with tanky marches. This can also help you and give you some ideas like what type of marchers you want to bring out depending on the situation. When you are going offensive and they are already in their cities and you don't want to have bad trades, right? So in those kind of situations, you want to bring tanky marchers where you're not going to offer them the opportunity to get good trades on you. That's why you might not want to bring, for example, a Genghis, and if you don't want to bring him, you want to put him second to a Saladin, for example, or a Genghis and Takeda, but still might not be better to bring Genghis. It would be better if you either stay back a little bit and they just join with the others when they come out of their city and then draw back as well. So it's situations and situation when marchers can perform very well and situations where marchers will not perform very well. A smaller murder ball situation can also be when you're going through the cities and they just want to again come out and just gank you. For example, if you have a Genghis over there, or if you have a Minamoto or some of the other weak marchers that just don't have much defense, they will just simply demolish you in matter of seconds. That's when you want to have a little bit more tanky marches. And even if you can't bring 5, like I was mentioning, right? Because I have 25 legendaries, but you bring 3. You just want to make sure that you make the best out of the situation and you bring the marches that will give you the benefits for the situation. If there is any questions about everything that I just said in this video, please drop them in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. I also try to explain the best way that I can regarding the big murder ball and regarding the smaller murder ball. So don't get me wrong, if you just have tanky marchers, it doesn't mean that in the big murder ball you're not going to be useful. It's just that having this kind of super nuking marchers in the big murder ball can pay off because they will be able to just destroy some of the marches very easily. Again, firepower has its perks, but also has his negativity because you don't have defense, right? So if someone is really focusing on you, like I was mentioning, when I was going into the smaller murder ball, when we were doing 10 versus 10, it was not very good. And to make you understand, 10 versus 10, 5 marches from each player. So 2 players versus 2 players, each with 5 marches. My super nuking marchers were not able to sustain damage because I was being focused. Edward going down, Elcid going down, and I had to retreat. I was having 3 marchers left and they were still with 5 marchers each. So it was obviously a win-win situation for them. But when I went with the defensive marchers, the things just change around. So there you have it. This can give you a lot of insight about the game and the marches that you always want to bring on the field depending on the situation. Until next time, this is your boy Jeroni signing off. Peace out, y'all, and take care. See you on the next one, and stay safe out there, my friends.